Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our live webinar discussing Sukuk as alternative financing tool in Azerbaijan. This webinar is jointly brought to you by the ICD, the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, in collaboration with the Islamic Development Bank Group Business Forum, Center for Analysis of Economic Reforms and Communication of Azerbaijan, and the Small and Medium Business Development Agency of the Republic of Azerbaijan. My name is Vüsal Gasımlı. I am Executive Director, and I will be your host for today's seminar. Joining us today, we have a great line up of leading industry experts in the Islamic finance sector, who will be providing us their expertise and insight from across the Sukuk potential in Azerbaijan. Before we start here, some important notes. This live webinar is delivered via Zoom and comes with video, audio, and accompanying presentation slides. Please note only the speakers can share their video and audio. Our webinar today features real-time Q&A. If you have joined us via Zoom, send us your questions via the Q&A tab located at the bottom of your screen. And if you are watching this webinar via YouTube, send us your questions via the live chat box located at the right-hand side of your screen. Finally, please excuse any unforeseeable technical disruptions that might occur during the live session. Some of our speakers are participating in this webinar remotely due to the current pandemic. If you face any technical issues, please let us know via the Q&A chat. So before we hear from our speakers, allow me to set the scene. Hereby, I take a chance and greet all speakers and guests. Initially, I would like to start my speech with that Sukuk is an alternative financing mechanism. First of all, it's a fact that Islamic financial system has been developing in spite of the global pandemic and the economic crisis stemmed from it. The real driving factor of such development is the unique nature of Islamic financial system. Obviously, Islam religion emphasizes the importance of real asset-based commercial and financial operations. According to classical economic terminology, Islam commercial law supports money, commodity, and money relationship. As Azerbaijan needs new investment boom after tripling its economy under the leadership of President Ilham Aliyev during the last 17 years, Islamic financial tools are very attractive for us. Moreover, after the liberation of Karabakh region, Azerbaijan has widened its economic outlook and investment plans. Therefore, there's a huge potential of boosting green financing mechanism and developing Islamic financial system called Sukuk in all regions, including Karabakh. In Karabakh region, renewable energy, transport, waste management, sustainable management of natural resources, green tourism, sustainable agriculture, and other green projects are in implementation phases, which Sukuk can be an additional financing instrument in the region with a high rate of return on investment. Consequently, Sukuk has its own innovative and unique nature, which it supports sustainable development goals, including development of green economy and digital transformation. For instance, Islamic finance is commonly known for its prohibition of certain financial practice, such as the charging of interest or industries prohibited by the religion. The objectives of these prohibitions are fundamentally aimed at increasing the general welfare and justice of society. This is, in essence, compatible with green finance, which it directs investments to the environmental benefits. Hence, such environmental benefits exist in Sukuk, and Islamic finance contributes to the environmental conservation and climate action. Green Sukuk, which with its specific structural requirements and underpinning philosophy of concurrently express economic, environmental, and Islamic values, as a potential of overcoming some of the issues faced by the green finance. I would like to welcome Mr. Ayman Sijini, Chief Executive Officer of the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector, to say a few words by listening to this recorded video. Please.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. السلام عليكم. On behalf of the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector ICD, the private sector arm of the Islamic Development Bank Group, it is an honor and privilege to join you at the first Sukuk webinar organized jointly with our partners from the Republic of Azerbaijan. It is my fervent hope that the first Sukuk webinar will strive and continue to be much anticipated gathering that all stakeholders look forward to attend in the future indeed. ICD pledges to continue supporting development of Sukuk products in Republic of Azerbaijan. Honorable participants, Sukuk has much to offer to any economy as an alternative type of funding. Sukuk and its inherent characteristics lend themselves well to facilitating the promoting sustainable development, such as the risk-sharing model of finance that promotes assets and development funds and the close link with the real economy. Sukuk can create an enabling environment for economic and social development, which bodes well for overall growth in regional, especially post-COVID-19. I truly believe that the efficient utilization of Sukuk products will ensure the economic success of Republic of Azerbaijan. Distinguished participants, Sukuk product is now not only confined to Muslim majority countries. Beyond its traditional sphere, the Sukuk product has found firm footing in new jurisdictions such as Europe, the US, the Far East, and in CIS region, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, serving both sovereign and corporate clients. Throughout this period, financing institutions operating in the region have promoted Sukuk products among their customers, this increasing its relevance across many sectors which need financing. As the Republic of Azerbaijan rapidly transforms, the country possesses immense potential in becoming new regional hub of the Eurasia region. As ICD, in the Republic of Azerbaijan, we are mandated to provide capital and deliver knowledge and partnership. ICD stands ready to play the role as lead arranger in sovereign and corporate Sukuk issuance in Azerbaijan. ICD Sukuk advisory platform is facilitator to develop Islamic capital and debt money market. And in recent past, ICD has closed a number of Islamic Sukuk issuance in countries such as Senegal, First African Sovereign Sukuk, Ivory Coast, Togo, Jordan, and Mali. All were debt Sukuk history of those countries. To achieve our goal in line with our mandate to serve the private sector of our member countries, including Azerbaijan, we have a dedicated regional office based in Almaty, Kazakhstan, covering CIS and Europe countries. ICD provides financing for CIS countries totaling more than $600 million. since our inception in 1999. ICD has made significant inroads in advancing Islamic finance in member countries, particularly in CIS countries. To date, we have been involved with several initiatives, such as the establishment of Islamic banking windows in several countries in the region, including Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan, with many more in the pipeline. With a focus on the private sector and other levers of growth, we remain proud of our achievements in the CIS region, and we strive to continue bringing value addition through our dedicated effort in building the Islamic finance capabilities. It is truly our commitment to further contribute to the development of the Islamic finance industry and its wide entry in the maintenance of the global economy. We are proud to have established the first Islamic leasing company called Ansar Leasing in Azerbaijan, where ICD is 100% sole shareholder. Also, with our strategic partners from Republic of Azerbaijan, we established the first Islamic investment company called Caspian International Investment Company in Azerbaijan, where ICD has 18% ownership shares. Via ICD line of finance product jointly with local banks from the Republic of Azerbaijan, we also supported small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, in Republic of Azerbaijan. Currently, we are having active dialogue with local banks from Republic of Azerbaijan in order to allocate new lines of financing to be channeled to SMEs. Taken as a whole, it is clear that throughout our portfolio of activities ranging from investment in Islamic banks and leasing companies, advisory services on sovereign Sukuk issuance and capacity building program, as well as financing of infrastructure projects in key economic sectors, we at ICD aim to complement Islamic finance role as facilitator of growth. In this regards, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome new strategic partnership with the Republic of Azerbaijan, especially those with aspiration for utilizing of Sukuk products, with our proven experience in this field. I look forward to exploring avenue for collaboration working together to achieve greater economic prosperity for the benefit of all. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, Sukuk product is one of the fastest growing products of the global finance industry. It will continue to create value for the global economy by facilitating the growth of various economic sectors and the infrastructure needed to support business activities. In some countries, Sukuk products have become systematically important financial tool, and in many others, it is too big to be ignored. Therefore, the time is ripe for the Republic of Azerbaijan to capitalize on utilization of Sukuk products in order to not be left behind. I remain optimistic of all the good that Sukuk products can bring to the Republic of Azerbaijan. However, setting aside the enthusiasm, several multi-dimensional challenges need to be addressed by regulators for Sukuk products to reach a new dimension in financial ecosystem of the Republic of Azerbaijan. Before I finish my speech, I would like to thank each of you for attending this important webinar and bring your experience to this gathering. You, as a respected and various government agencies, have a vision, the knowledge, the mean, and the experience to help shape the future of the economic of Azerbaijan. I look forward to hearing your experience and viewpoints and learning about new ideas to ensure the successful utilization of the Sukuk product in the country. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Many thanks, Mr. Ayman Sejini, for this insightful speech, and looking forward to meeting you physically in the near future. Now I welcome Mr. Rifat Atakşiyev, Deputy Chairman of COBIA, to say a few words. Unfortunately, today, Mr. Orhan Mehmedov couldn't join our seminar. Please, Mr. Atakşiyev.
Thank you, Professor Gasımlı. Esteemed participants, let me also firstly thank you all, and on behalf of the Small and Medium Business Development Agency of the Republic of Azerbaijan, to greet you and express gratitude to the organizers, especially to Mr. Gasımlı and this entity, for this initiative and opportunity to deliver remarks on behalf of our chairman. Using this opportunity, I send my regards to Mr. Ayman Sijini. We highly value his participation and his involvement in promoting alternative financial solutions in Azerbaijan. Small and medium enterprises play a major role in most economies, particularly in developing countries. However, access to finance is a key constraint to SME growth. It's the second most cited obstacle facing SMEs to grow their businesses in emerging markets and developing countries. And Azerbaijan is not exception here as well. Also, the government of Azerbaijan, with the support of international development finance institutions, has been undertaking a noticeable effort over the last years to improve financial landscape for business. There are still untapped resources to use and challenges faced. COVID-19 crisis, lockdowns, the closure of businesses have also increased the importance of investment-oriented financing, as many businesses were not able to perform due to unforeseen circumstances and loans that they have borrowed, which create additional stress for them. The government of Azerbaijan is committed to introduce alternative modes of financing to support SMEs and leverage economic growth in years to come. And Islamic finance and alternative finance is among these modes of financing that can be considered. Initial steps have already been done in this direction, and according to the grant agreement, which was signed between the Minister of Economy of the Republic of Azerbaijan and Islamic Development Bank Group a couple of years ago, with the support of SME Development Agency, international experts carried out diagnostic review of Islamic finance in Azerbaijan and drafted legislative amendments and strategic roadmap development of Islamic finance in the country. We are confident that as more investment instruments are introduced, the more financial inclusiveness for both investors and investees can be achieved. In this regard, our agency is also in the process of establishing the SME Development Fund, which will be focused on investments into small and medium business. This fund will be an open-ended fund, which investors could use as a kind of platform to gain exposure to the economy of Azerbaijan. The agency will continue to support the businesses where this fund will have equity with relevant trainings, mentoring, and consulting. Once the fund is formed, we would like to take this opportunity to invite the related and the interested investors to consider a kind of future opportunities to co-invest with SME Development Fund. And the last but not the least, in 2020, Azerbaijan has liberated its occupied lands, and now government of Azerbaijan is embarking on a large rebuilding process in these lands. And here, there are also vast opportunities for cooperation with related profiled financial institutions and private investors from friendly countries. And also to apply such models like PPP or potentially alternative mode of finance. And as the main topic of today's webinar is related to Sukuk, in conclusion, I would like to mention that recently, as you all may know, Azerbaijan, OJC, and the ICD have signed an MOU to jointly explore possibility of the Sukuk issuance at the annual general meeting of IDB Group in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Hopefully, we can consider this as a first step in introduction of investment-based instruments for the companies in different sectors in Azerbaijan. We hope that the formal introduction of Sukuk will pave way for businesses to attract funds from internal and external sources. We are also ready to cooperate with ICD together with the Center for Economic Reforms and Researches, and in order to improve SMS access to finance. It was very brief. Thank you very much to all, and thank you very much, Mr. Gasımlı, for giving the floor to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atakshi, for your welcoming speech and great ideas. Before proceeding to the first session, let's watch the ICD corporate video, which highlights ICD's activities, products, and services.
What does a business need to succeed? It needs strong leadership, clear goals, industry expertise, and financial stability. Together, these elements can contribute to your business's success, growth, prosperity, and longevity. With a heritage of helping businesses to thrive, ICD can support you. As part of the Islamic Development Bank Group, ICD provides access to finance. We've spent more than 20 years powering positive economic transformation across our member countries. Our vision is for sustained economic and social growth and prosperity across all of our member countries. And we support that vision by offering financial security, long-lasting partnership, deep expertise, and complete trust, so we can develop your projects and your expertise. Through our diverse range of Islamic finance products, such as line of finance, term and equity finance, your business will enjoy new opportunities. You can receive funding for existing and new projects, gain access to technical expertise and valuable training, and contribute meaningfully to your sustainable development goals by creating new jobs. Our support even extends beyond finance, with advisory services, debt capital market development, Sukuk issuance support, and expert guidance. Plus, our online platform, The Bridge, opens new horizons to our network and connects financial institutions who are ready to do business beyond their borders. Whatever eligible sector you work in, we can help you build a strong foundation on which to grow, so you can move forward to achieve your ambitions.
Great. Dear audience, we are now going to move to our first session, and I would like to welcome our moderator, Mr. Tariq Malaika, the lead principal Sukuk advisory at ICD, who will welcome the speakers. Please, Mr. Tariq Malaika.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I'm honored and excited today to be the moderator of this session. The panelists for this session have a combined wealth of knowledge that is truly impressive. Together, they have probably worked in every region one can imagine. Today's session will focus on Sukuk issuances in Azerbaijan and the CIS region in general. We have with us Mr. Muhammad Farouk Riza, the CEO of IFAS, the International Islamic Finance Advisory Firm, and Mr. Iqbal Daridia, advisor to ICD CEO and acting director for Treasury and for global markets and fixed income. Before we start, I have just a couple of housekeeping issues. If the audience would like to ask any questions to a specific panelist, please do so in the Q&A box in the bottom, and please specify who you would like to address the question to. And for my guests, even though I have some specific questions for each of you, it would be nice to have this as a discussion panel. And if you have anything to add to any of the answers, please do so. To start, I also thought, for the sake of our audience, if each of you could briefly introduce your organization when it comes to Sukuk and what it does. So Mr. Iqbal, if you can give a few words regarding that.
Thank you, Brother Tariq, for this introduction. As Tariq has said, I'm advisor to the CEO of Islamic Cooperation for the Development of the Private Sector. We are part of the Islamic Development Bank Group. We have 55 member countries that we serve across the world. Some of these countries are called fragile states, and half of these countries are in the war zone. So we have a challenge on our hands, but our mandate is very clear that we serve 55 member countries. Our products range from equity, whereby we invest in institutions to Islamize them or to open Islamic windows in them. We also have a project called BRAVE, which is to empower women. And we have a project in Burkina Faso and Nigeria as well to support the women there. Within the equity department, we also have remedial management and also line of finance business, which the CEO explained, which is to reach out to the SMEs in the respective countries. That line of finance is one of our core activities within ICD. We also have asset management, which has a number of funds under that. And then another line of business is the one that Tariq just mentioned, which I oversee, which is global markets and fixed income and treasury. Under that, we issue Sukuk for third parties. We also have PPP, infrastructure financing, corporate finance, and syndication desk. And as I say, treasury as well. Thank you, Tariq. That's the introduction from my side.
Thank you. Mr. Farouk, please.
Thank you, Tariq. Chok salam har kase. It's always a pleasure for me to be in Azerbaijan and with Azerbaijan. So I'm really pleased to be sharing my humble experience with you today. I had the Islamic Finance Advisory called IFAS, IFAAS. And we, for the last 15 years, we have had the privilege actually of working in excess of 50 different jurisdictions. And that's all the way from North America to Africa to Asia to the Far East and so on. And out of these 50 jurisdictions, we have actually worked with the governments and the stakeholders of more than 30 countries, including Azerbaijan. So as an advisory firm that specializes in Islamic finance policy framework and the strategic roadmaps, etc., we have been actually providing these services to Islamic Development Bank Group for the last, I think, maybe around 12, 13 years, and many other multilateral organizations as well. So alhamdulillah, we have had the opportunity to study, multiple jurisdictions, to understand their, Islamic financial ecosystems, what works and what doesn't in different countries, how, the things can be, lessons can be learned, can be drawn from the countries that have been actually very successful in establishing Islamic finance ecosystem, for those who are still, new in this matter. So I think it was just before the pandemic that we were commissioned, about a year ago before the pandemic, we were commissioned by Islamic Development Bank to conduct a project for the Republic of Azerbaijan, where we worked with the Ministry of Finance, and the project sponsorship was provided by COBIA or SMBDA. And that provided us the opportunity to study carefully the Azerbaijan, financial ecosystem and, where Islamic finance is, and particularly this issue of Sukuk. So, we prepared a report that was shared and submitted, to the authorities in Azerbaijan, to all the stakeholders, and also to, Islamic Development Bank Group. And it contained also actually a roadmap, a strategic roadmap that was recommended from IFA's side, for Azerbaijan to roll out Islamic financial services and instruments, including Sukuk. Unfortunately, as soon as the report was submitted and it was approved by the stakeholders, the pandemic started, and things changed and things stalled. But I'm really hopeful, inshallah, that now things will be picking up soon. And I'm really glad that this webinar is being organized today, because that's a very good indication of, of the commitment of the Azeri stakeholders, and also the commitment from ICD to take it forward, inshallah. And I think, it will be, inshallah, very conducive today. So I'll rest my introduction here, and happy to answer the questions there.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that introduction. I think so. A good place to start would be talking about the legal framework So, Mr. Iqbal, could you highlight the challenges for Sukuk legal framework in the CIS?
Yes, sure. A number of countries in the CIS region have Islamic finance legislation in place. If you take, for example, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, they all have the Islamic legislation. Kazakhstan was probably one of the first countries to introduce Islamic finance law in 2008. It has amended the laws several times to accommodate more Sharia concepts, including takaful and sukuk. Kazakhstan was admitted to the General Council of Islamic Banks and Financial Institutions as a member in 2018. However, what we have seen is that very little progress has been made in the Islamic finance when it comes to Kazakhstan. ICD has a couple of investments there and is in order to issue a passed Islamic law in 2014. And the National Bank of Tajikistan is in the process of developing a regulatory framework to facilitate licensing Islamic credit organizations. In 2019, the National Bank of Kyrgyz Republic's Board of Directors approved instructions on running Sharia-compliant bank accounts and deposits per AOFI standards. Yesterday, I heard that Tajikistan has issued a law to abolish the double taxation that is applied in the transactions. So that's good news if it's Tajikistan, if they've done that. So, some of the Central Asian countries have seen progress, but there is no real concrete development when it comes to the sukuk or to issue or to embrace other Islamic products. We see Uzbekistan is probably one of the countries where ICD has a large exposure when it comes to line of finance. So the Murabaha product is very prevalent in Uzbekistan. And as per the statement that's made by the president of Uzbekistan, there is a momentum now in the country to move towards Islamic finance. And in that regard, ICD has got 9 mandates to open Islamic windows for conventional banks. So that's probably one of the first steps that is being taken. Also, Uzbekistan has signed a cooperation agreement with the Islamic Development Bank to develop legal and institutional framework for Islamic financial instruments with a goal to establish Islamic banking in Uzbekistan next year. So thank you, Tariq.
Thank you very much, Iqbal. Mr. Farouk, as you worked on the report for the ISDB regarding Azerbaijan, is the current legal framework in Azerbaijan Sukuk friendly?
Thank you, Tariq. I think it's a very pertinent question. Okay, I will put it in the following way. That the current legislative principle in Azerbaijan, they are actually quite enabling, and there is nothing in the constitution or the civil code that actually prevents something like Sukuk, to be structured, to be, issued and, traded, in Azerbaijan. I'm referring to specific articles in the constitution and in the civil code and also tax code that provide the basis of, a Sukuk issuance. However, what I would suggest that is probably missing so far is actually the very precise legal framework that will be required in order to to structure Sukuk and to launch these instruments in Azerbaijan. What I'm referring to is there are so there is this overarching constitutional civil code led environment that is there. So this is I think actually a good foundation.
What is required now is, the framework for example, how the SPV for Sukuk will be established, how, on what basis, it will be operating, the taxation issues, for example, the movement of assets in a Sukuk structure, how that will be treated from a taxation point of view. So these precisions are, not there yet. This is something I think is a work in progress. The good thing that we have observed in Azerbaijan is actually the government support that we believe is outstanding. The experience that we have had with the Ministry of Finance, with the Central Bank of Azerbaijan, and with Kobia, of course, was very supportive, and we can see that there is a real, commitment for pushing Islamic finance, making it more mainstream in the country, and adopting Sukuk, as one of the government, securities, and also, promoting it through the corporate, sector of Azerbaijan. However, these small, steps that are still required, these were included, in the strategic roadmap that we and the report and our recommendations that were provided to the stakeholders in Azerbaijan. So, there is still some work required, but I believe that we are not too far. So, the groundwork is already there. We just need to fine tune, these things to be precise, to make sure that, there is a strong legal foundation that is available, and, the environment is positive. If it's not providing, any additional support to Sukuk, at least it's not preventing it from happening, and it's not making it, more complicated or more expensive. The one other component that may be required, I think, is, the presence of, a dispute resolution system, that in case there is a default or something in, inshallah, future Sukuk in Azerbaijan, then how that will be dealt. So these are the, the components that I believe are still required. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Akbar, as you are aware of the challenges and you're in contact with many of the sovereigns, could you shed some background on the plans of sovereigns and corporates from Central Asia to issue Sukuk?
Yes, as already we've established, it's still very early days in terms of the Sukuk issuances from the region. If we go back and see if there's a Sukuk issued from the CIS countries, then we can see that in 2012, the Development Bank of Kazakhstan issued a 240 million ringgit Sukuk. Since then, a number of corporates from CIS have been attempting to issue Sukuk, but they have struggled because of the lack of legislation. Now that there is legislation in certain countries, we hope and we expect that these countries will start by issuing Sukuk. We believe, as I mentioned earlier, Uzbekistan is taking the right steps in moving towards Islamic banking. Tajikistan has got a full-fledged Islamic bank, which was converted by ICD. So again, that's the right step, and we understand there is our second bank also, which has been licensed as well. Kazakhstan, we hope that it will continue to forge on its Islamic banking initiative that it has established. As far as ICD is concerned, ICD has just established its second Sukuk program, and we are eyeing Kazakhstan to host our debut offering in local currency very soon. And the reason for that is that the CIS countries have got their currencies are very volatile, and when there is a depreciation, there is a big depreciation. It's not a small depreciation. So therefore, for ICD to fund for its line of finance transactions, it has established this program whereby then we lend in the local currency. So for the end user, it is a natural hedge for them. And therefore, they avoid this volatility of the exchange rates. We are putting in a pilot project there. The initial program is $100 million equivalent in tenge currency. And we've lined up the institutions in order to take up that the $100 million equivalent of tenge currency. It should be noted that, and I think it was mentioned as well, that Azegold, which is a state-owned mining company that focuses on metal ore, could issue a Sukuk as the first Sukuk issuer out of Azerbaijan. They've recently signed an MOU with ICD to explore that possibility amongst other areas of collaboration that we have. And we expect that, inshallah, they may be one of the first companies to issue a Sukuk. Thank you.
So as a follow-up question, Mr. Iqbal, you mentioned that there are these newly established Islamic banks or converted banks. Do you expect any Sukuk issuances from the CIS in the next 12 months, let's say?
I would say that yes, there is a need, and therefore I would say that once the Islamic windows are established, then there will be a demand for Sukuk issuances for them to finance a number of projects that are coming up in those countries. So yes, the answer in short is yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Farouk, you're talking about Azerbaijan and how certain things need to be in place. So what kind of an ecosystem is needed for the issuance of Sukuk? And is Azerbaijan ready for developing such an ecosystem?
Yeah, well, in my view, Azerbaijan is ready for developing such ecosystem. As I mentioned earlier, that the government support is outstanding, and the stakeholders are really committed, to materialize this dream, I would say, inshallah. The legal framework, this is a process that the country has to go through to adopt the legal system in accordance with the requirements of the instruments like Sukuk. As I mentioned earlier, there are precise requirements that need to be met, and this is something that will come with time. But we also need to think about the rest of the ecosystem, meaning that there has to be a regulatory and supervisory framework that is also adopted, for Sukuk and for Islamic finance. Central Bank of Azerbaijan, Ministry of Finance, etc., have been working, I think, very hard over the last few years, in order to develop these frameworks that I believe should be ready soon. Things may have been delayed a little bit due to the pandemic, but I think, again, this is something that this is in progress. The taxation regime is, not adequate at the moment. But again, as I said, this is something that has been discussed. It has been included in the report with very clear recommendations. What things need to be addressed. For example, the withholding taxes, the corporate taxes, corporation taxes, and so on and so forth. So all these things. They need to be addressed, but the framework is there, so recommendations are there. It's just a matter of putting things into perspective and having the required approvals from the authorities. Also, when we are going into Sukuk, there are different structures, so it will inherently require corporate and Sharia governance frameworks as well. So of course, the Sharia governance is very important, but so is corporate, because obviously there will be assets moving around. There will be different types of fiduciary duties that will be kicking in for the issuers, for the managers of those assets. So these things need to be in place as well. The dispute resolution system I already mentioned. Obviously, when we go into Sukuk, we're not saying that the disputes will happen in the very beginning, but it's a probability, and the country has to be ready for that. So that needs to be factored in as well. And plus, there I think is a very important factor that it's not only the Sukuk that we need. So we need actually a more diverse type of Islamic finance industry in Azerbaijan. There are already some Islamic windows that are operating, and the ICD owned leasing companies and etc. So there is already the minimal is already there. However, we need to look more at takaful as well, and other microfinance or Islamic microfinance actually is in big demand in Azerbaijan. That's what we came across in our project, but that needs to be addressed as well. So there has to be more asset management, more of these funds and so on and so forth. So all these things need to be in place in order to make sure that there is a full ecosystem that is operating, and it's supporting the Sukuk, and Sukuk are supporting the ecosystem itself. I think one of the key reasons that we need to bear in mind is that when we talk about Islamic banks or Islamic windows or takaful operators, etc., in any country, then inherently there are other things that will kick in. For example, for the prudential requirements of these financial institutions who will be offering Islamic financial products, there will be instruments required, and otherwise, their growth, their sustainability will be compromised. So Sukuk becomes extremely important and rather critical from that perspective, because at the moment, in Baku Stock Exchange, the mainly traded debt securities, they are primarily government or quasi-government securities, bonds and notes, etc., issued by the Central Bank of Azerbaijan and the Ministry of Finance. Now, what we do when, for example, Islamic banks and Islamic windows, they start growing, they might not be able actually to invest in these bonds, etc., because of Sharia compliance reasons. So there has to be an alternative for them. Hence, a Sharia compliant security like Sukuk becomes very important for the growth and sustainability of the entire industry and the ecosystem.
Thank you. So when it comes to incentives, what kind can be put in place for Sukuk issuers in the country?
Well, I would say that incentive is something that probably is more political than I think financial or Sharia reasons, if you want, because it's a policy. And it will be entirely up to the government in Azerbaijan to decide whether they want to offer something, for the Sukuk issuers. For example, we have, seen in Malaysia and in some other countries as well, in Indonesia as well, where, specific incentives in terms of, tax exemptions, in terms of, other facilities, for example, capacity building of the staff and the personnel that is working in Islamic finance, etc., is provided by the government as a policy, in order to promote and to, encourage, the potential issuers and, the financial system, players to engage more into Sharia compliant activities. So these things are definitely possible. But as I said, this is more of a policy decision instead of anything else. So if the Azeri stakeholders, they are willing to do that, then it will be great. And certain incentives like tax exemptions or the possibility of deduction of the cost of issuance from their financial statements, etc. That may be something that can be encouraging for these issuers, and I'm referring to corporate sector, but obviously certain incentives can be also attached for the investors in government issued Sukuk in order to encourage the take-up of these instruments, inshallah.
Inshallah. So what are the potential opportunities for the issuance of Sukuk in Azerbaijan?
Well, of course, I believe that the sovereign Sukuk is definitely, I think, it's required, I would say. Inshallah, it will help tremendously the growth of the Islamic finance sector in the country. But also, I heard very keenly, the speech of the vice chair of Kobia. This is, I think, very important. SMEs are, the lifeline, and I have seen how Azerbaijan is focusing, on the small and medium enterprise. And this is very important. I believe that there is also a possibility of, a quasi-sovereign type of, sukuk that may be issued, by COBIA or through COBIA for the benefit of, the SMEs in the country. And of course, there are, big corporates as well who might be interested as well. But I think probably the first step will be issuing a sovereign sukuk, because that will help pave, the way for the rest. It will also provide, the benchmark, and it will also clear up some of, the pending issues especially in the legal, taxation, and governance frameworks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Iqbal, as you are aware, sustainable sukuk is the current craze. What do you think is the likelihood of Azerbaijan or any other CIS country issuing such an instrument?
As you know, I mean, the investors' appetite for green sukuk is soaring amid the mounting concerns regarding the climate change. This should help a country like Azerbaijan in lowering the cost of financing projects that reduce carbon emission and mitigate the climate change. However, a lack of pricing incentive may discourage some sukuk issuers. There is a modest price benefit, but nothing sort of massive. However, under the legislation, the country has to introduce the sustainable sukuk law as well, because it requires certain amendments to the way that the sukuk is issued, especially when it comes to green bond and the sustainability sukuk as well. You have to have into consideration the green bond principles and the social Islamic bond principles as well. Thank you.
So, Mr. Iqbal, can the ESG and SDG sukuk offer an alternative route to accessing new pools of capital?
Yes, definitely that could happen. However, as I say to you, that you have to make sure that the funding that is raised under the ESG, which is the environmental, social, and governance the consideration, should go towards green and socially responsible investing. The green sukuk is used for environmental benefits, which is under the green bond principles, and the social Islamic bond is used for social benefits, which is under the social bond principles. However, the sustainability sukuk is used both for the environmental and social benefits, and it's aligned with both the GBP and the SBP that I mentioned. In order to promote the integrity and the credibility in the green sukuk market, there has to be the confidence that the issuer is going to use the proceeds exclusively to finance projects with an environmental benefit. And what you need to do in order to establish the issuance is there has to be a guidance on the key components of launching a green bond. They promote the availability of information to investors for them to evaluate the environmental impact, and assist underwriters by moving the market towards expected disclosures that will facilitate the transactions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So when it comes to promoting green or social sukuk in the CIS countries, is this something that ICD is actively doing?
ICD is promoting the ESG sukuk issuance currently, but as you know, there is a need for a second opinion providers who will evaluate the institution's framework and guidance for assessing and selecting the eligible projects for green social investments. And the second opinion is based on documentation of rules and framework to be provided by the issuers. So what you have in there is just like when you issue a sukuk, you have a Sharia fatwa. In the similar way, the ESG has to have a body who will oversee the investments throughout the life of the transaction. And also you have to have a framework in place which guides how the investment will take place. We believe that probably for the CIS countries, the initial step is to issue a plain vanilla sukuk and then move towards the green and socially responsible investments under the ESG.
Excellent. That was going to be my next question, but you covered it. So basically, you would advise them to first do a plain vanilla sukuk, then in the future do a sustainable or green sukuk. Thank you very much for your answer. I have a final question for both the panelists. So if you could ask, if I could ask you to summarize in one sentence, one thing that would dramatically change the sukuk market for positive in the next coming year, what would it be? Mr. Farouk?
Thank you, Tariq. I like your, one sentence restriction. I will probably take the liberty of saying a few lines instead of
Go
one,
ahead.
if you allow me.
No problem.
Okay, so I think the take-home line that I will give is it's time for execution. And, there has been planning, there has been, all the groundwork done. It's time for execution, inshallah. And, I think the day we will see, the first Azri Sukuk, inshallah, is not that far. This is a short line. However, I would like to dwell a little bit more, given my experience in Azerbaijan and also the CIS region. I believe that, we need to be, I think, more realistic, and we probably need to be a bit more gentle with Azerbaijan and with the CIS region. These countries are very young, full of, potential, full of energy, and full of commitment. I'm talking through my own personal experience. We have had the opportunity of working with technically all the, the CIS region countries, with the exception of one. And this is the general feeling that I have got. And in Azerbaijan, more precisely, it's happening, inshallah. I think where there is a little bit of, patience required, that, Islamic finance and especially Sukuk is a complex type of structure. It requires a lot of understanding. It requires, time for people to absorb, to digest, and to, fully, embrace the spirit of Sukuk. So, when sometimes I feel that we push too much because there is industry pressure, because there are economic, pressures, etc., or political pressure, then it becomes difficult for the stakeholders, and they find it hard actually to execute. Whereas if we remain more realistic and we accept the fact that, being a young country, Azerbaijan is only 20 plus years old, as a republic, and, with everything that is happening, they need time, and we need to support them. So we as ICD, IFAS, and all the other, industry stakeholders, we really need to be patient with them. We really need to stretch our hand, based on our experience, and to help them through this, inshallah. And with the commitment that we can see from there, I think it's just a matter of time. So this collaboration, I think, is very important. And the main thing for Azerbaijan stakeholders is to keep moving. So we should not stall. We should just keep making, small steps, and we are getting there, inshallah. So that's my message.
Yeah. So patience. Mr. Iqbal?
Tariq, I'm going to take liberty as well, not to mention one sentence only. One is, of course, that we have said it time and time again, that there has to be a uniformity when it comes to Sharia. So we require uniformity so that everyone is clear from a Sharia perspective on the respective structures, and the differences that exist between the GCC Sharia advisors and the Malaysian advisors as well, and what is acceptable there and what is not acceptable in the GCC. So that's one part of it. The second part is that for Islamic finance in general to prosper and the Sukuk issuances specifically, I liked the way that it took off in Malaysia, in the sense that the central bank in effect gave directives to the financial institutions that if anyone wants to raise financing, then the first priority should be given is to Islamic finance and Sukuk in particular. And what you have seen with that is that there was a tremendous growth in Islamic finance in Malaysia. It's probably the leading country in Islamic finance in terms of assets and liabilities. And I believe that if any country wants to promote Islamic finance, then they have to encourage their financial institutions to support the Islamic finance by offering that as one of the preferred products, and that should see a growth in Islamic finance. Now, in order for a Sukuk to grow in any country, then the sovereign should take a lead, and sovereign should issue a Sukuk. This will give encouragement to the other potential issuers. And my last point is that what we are seeing in terms of Sukuk issuances are Sukuks from the sovereigns and financial institutions in particular. We see very, very little in terms of Sukuk issuances from corporates. And if the corporates start issuing Sukuks, then I think that it will help the capital markets as well in terms of the secondary trading, because most of the Sukuks that are issued are traded, but thinly traded. And we would like to see the secondary market also developing when it comes to Sukuk issuances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It was a pleasure hosting you. We do have a couple of questions in the Q&A box. It doesn't specify to who the question is. First one is, which sectors do you foresee Sukuk to be issued first in Azerbaijan? And then another question, you might share your experience from Uzbekistan and or Tajikistan. So I think, Iqbal, can you tackle that one?
Yeah. I would say that in Azerbaijan, perhaps the first, as I said to you, is the sovereign, that the sovereign should take a lead in issuing the Sukuk. And that could be for the budget deficit and or projects that the government has. When it comes to corporates, then it can be for their working capital requirements, or even if a corporate has got certain projects, then Sukuk can be issued. However, one thing to note is that for a Sukuk issuance, there has to be some kind of a minimum size that is acceptable and will attract investors into investing in the international Sukuk market that I'm talking about now. Generally, what we do is that we will put in a program of, say, $500 million or $1 billion. And under that program, we issue a series of Sukuk. And that could be maybe the first Sukuk can be maybe $200 to $300 million. What that does is that some of the investors will not participate unless they see a decent size. And also there has to be some secondary market trading as well. So I see that for projects and for the government as well, this
I think it's cutting up a little bit.
Product that
Yeah, I think we've lost Iqbal, or it's cutting up.
Okay. Meanwhile,
yes, would you like to add?
Can I just say a few words? I think you know, two very important points have been mentioned you know in the last few minutes. The first one is about the standardization of Sharia. So I think with the IOFI, you know, Sharia governance and you know, accounting and auditing standards, the ethics, I think that issue has been you know, primarily resolved now. I think it's you know, an increasing number of countries are adopting Sharia, IOFI Sharia standards and IOFI governance standards, and that actually resolves you know, this matter. Hopefully, inshallah. And this was one of the recommendations that we, you know, provided in our report to, you know, the ASRI stakeholders about adopting, you know, the IOFI standards. So, inshallah, that will be very helpful. The second thing is, you know, reference to the secondary market. Now, this is where I see that there will be a challenge because, you know, in order to promote a secondary market trading, we need to have a regular supply of Sukuk, and you know, it's always you know, a catch-22 for the countries that are new into you know, into Sukuk, because how do you do that? You know, on one hand, you have to provide a decent size of issuance. On the other hand, you want you know, to have it you know, traded as well. Usually it's you know, not the case. It doesn't happen because with when the supply is scarce, it inherently you know, leads to this you know, this culture of hold to maturity, and that's why having a regular supply of Sukuk, so instead of having you know, a very big issuance of $1 billion, it will probably have it will make more sense to have you know, maybe 3 issuances you know, but on a regular basis, because that will then give the confidence, and you know, it will you know, dynamize, if you want, you know, the secondary market. Otherwise, you know, the first investors, they will just invest and they will, you know, keep hold of it until maturity, which is usually the case. So I think this is also has to be part of the strategy that Azerbaijan develops. It's not only issuing one Sukuk like you know, some countries that have done, especially in the West, you know, I'm referring to Luxembourg, but to be more regular supplier, because that's where you know, the industry will feel more confident and you know, more engaged in the process.
Thank you very much. So thank you, gentlemen, for your time today. It was an honor hosting you and a pleasure always. I'll give the mic to Mr. Samir to conduct the next session, please.
Thank you, Tariq. I also, on my behalf, want to thank to all the speakers for the great, we're having discussion almost 1 hour now, and I feel like more people are registering, so interest is there. In terms of house rules, I would like to say that the second session, we will talk about public-private partnership. But before introducing my 2 distinguished speakers, they are with us here today, I would like to remind to our new participants who joined us that you can ask questions in a Q&A box live. We will be answering these questions. Please address this question to exact speaker which you want to address this question. With this, I'm gonna start with our first speaker, Mr. Ashik Moyad. Mr. Ashik is my colleague, and he's head of infrastructure and corporate finance division at ICD. Ashik has been involved more than 2 decades in the financing of private sector projects in the emerging and developing markets. He has been leading the Infrastructure and Corporate Finance Corporation since August 2018. ICD Infrastructure and Corporate Finance team deals with financing of transactions in a wide range of sectors, such as infrastructure, power, renewable energy, industries, retail, in the form of both project finance and infrastructure finance. Ashik joined ICD in 2018 from PPP department in ISDB, headquartered in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, where he worked as a senior investment officer. Before joining ISDB Group, Ashik worked for IFC, World Bank Group, as an investment officer in their South Asia department. Before joining IFC, he was director of head of debt capital markets in Bangladesh at Chartered Standard Bank. Mr. Ashik has an MBA from Institute of Business Administration, University of Dhaka. Mr. Ashik, welcome to our session. Very pleased to welcome you in this webinar. Our second speaker is distinguished Dr. Aydin from Turkey. Dr. Aydin is a very popular person in PPP industry. Additionally, he worked for MDBs such as World Bank and ISDB. He delivered officially PPP training program for member countries from Islamic Development Bank Group. He also is a chairman of Istanbul Public-Private Partnership Center for Excellence, which is based in Istanbul. He's a chairman of DEIK, which is a business development arm of Turkish government. Also chairs SES chapter of WAPP in Turkey. Mr. Dr. Aydin, welcome to our webinar. With this, I'm gonna go to Brother Ashik to briefly talk about ICD infrastructure and term finance department. Then I will go to specific questions regarding PPP in Azerbaijan. Thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Brother Samir, and Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon to everyone. Really pleased to be in this with this very distinguished panel and audience. From our side at ICD, in the infrastructure and corporate finance operation, we support member countries, the private sector projects in the infrastructure. What we completely appreciate, not just from ICD, but across the group, that the infrastructure gaps in our member countries are in varying degrees, of course, exist. In some cases, very substantial, in some cases, moderately. In some cases quite advanced, but it does exist, and there is also a lot of need for two other dimensions, two other aspects. One is modernization, and the other one is also freeing up fiscal space for the government. And then there is this third very important dimension, which is to bring in the best practices, management capacity, technical capacity, and through the private sector partnership, encouraging the private sector partnership by the governments. From our side, we are in the infrastructure segment. We're not really focused so much on the upstream. We're not really so much active on the... Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Sure. So
I can hear you.
Thank you. So from our side, we are very active on the downstream side of the value chain, where we support the specific projects or the programs. So we have supported a number of, for example, solar energy projects, IPPs across our member countries, starting from places like Egypt to Jordan to Pakistan. As well as we have earlier supported certain thermal power plant projects in places where that was the only viable solution. For example, in places like a certain country in sub-Saharan Africa. So we have supported those projects, and we've worked very closely with the private sector sponsors, the governments, and other co-financiers in the process. So those are activities we have done. At a group level, we have supported this project on multiple fronts. So from our flagship shareholder, Islamic Development Bank, from the PPP team, where I used to work before coming to ICD, we have also supported numerous infrastructure PPP projects across different countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan, quite a few in Saudi Arabia, in UAE, in Uzbekistan, recently in Kazakhstan as well, in the Bakat project, the Almaty Ring Road, as well as in Turkey. From our side, we have also supported projects in Turkey in the healthcare sector in PPP. And then moving on in Africa, PPP projects in Morocco, in Mali and Senegal, and so on. So it is a widespread operation with the group portfolio well over, I would say, $3 billion or thereabouts. So it's a fairly large operation for the group. And over and above that, we also from the group, not just from, not necessarily from ICD, but from the group, our sister entity ISEC offers political risk insurance to developers and sponsors when they enter into market where they may or may not have a very high risk appetite. So there is a wide range of activities, wide range of sectors that we have undertaken. And in doing so, we are in constant dialogues with private sector investors, project developers, state-owned enterprises and line ministries, and the PPP units and so on and so forth. And of course, other fellow lenders and advisors. Other than that, we are very active in corporate finance, but corporate finance, mostly we are focused in manufacturing or services sector and less so in infrastructure. So broadly, and that is also a very vibrant operation within the ICD. So overall, that gives a summary of what we do in infrastructure. Primary focus being infrastructure, PPP project finance in a wide range of sectors, starting from social infrastructure to hardcore economic infrastructure and various subsectors within that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ashik. My question will be to Dr. Aydin. Dr. Aydin, what exactly Center for Excellence does in terms of PPP for member countries? I know you have done a lot of work. I'm a big follower of you in LinkedIn, social media, and I see you have done so much work on this matter. What exactly you did for last 12 months for Azerbaijan in terms of PPP industry? And then you can overall talk to about your excellence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you all for having me this very timely and very important webinar. And really, I am very pleased to be here with Azerbaijan and in Azerbaijan. Istanbul PPP Center of Excellence, actually, we established it, it was 2016. Last 10 years in Turkey, there have been a lot of PPP projects have been completed very successfully. And from 2016, we have some PPP projects in transport, in health sector, in energy, in airport. So on the operational phase, what we think about it, there's a very huge experience in Turkey in project preparation, in construction, and in operation phase as well. So we would like to share all this knowledge, know-how with the countries who would like to penetrate, who would like to develop PPP projects in their countries. So we established Center of Excellence, and we started to organize Istanbul PPP Week. It was 2016, and this year we will organize it for the 6th time in December, Istanbul PPP Week, and we invite more than 30 countries, the PPP units, the head of PPP units, and they come here, we gather here in Istanbul. It's a knowledge sharing pool, because those countries are different levels. Some of them have been completed some PPP projects, some of them are starting at the beginning point. So it's a really good know-how and sharing platform Istanbul PPP Center of Excellence created. And then we are delivering some advisory services to the countries during the project preparation phase. And we are delivering some PPP training program, not theoretical, but also in practical. And we are welcoming PPP delegation from those countries. This is the overall activities of Center of Excellence. But in terms of Azerbaijan, luckily we signed a memorandum of understanding last year with KOBİA, a small and medium business agency. And we are working together in order to develop a PPP ecosystem in Azerbaijan. So we would like to share all our knowledge with Azerbaijan, because I know there are good opportunities in Azerbaijan. So developing some healthcare projects, some transport projects, some school dormitory projects. So we are working very closely with our colleagues from Azerbaijan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Mr. Ashik, my question to you in terms of potential for PPP projects in CIS and specifically in Azerbaijan. in terms of what kind of projects, what kind of sectors you are interested to finance. What will be the tenor? What will be door-to-door financing? I think this is questions our participants are more interested in terms of this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir, for the question. And I think I'm really glad to know that Dr. Aydin and the experts are working in Azerbaijan to work on the PPP ecosystem, because I think that's very important. In terms of the sectors, look, in general, the financiers these days are mostly guided by two things. One is the SDG. Obviously, there are specific, especially for DFIs. The DFIs have specific focus on connecting the dots and being sort of more targeted and deliberative on the SDG side. And the second thing is the bankability and financial sustainability of the projects and programs. So in general, I do not feel that by and large, the lenders are very focused on one particular sector. The lenders are generally at a very high level, could be sector agnostic. The key issue is really from the host government side, that what are the sectors that they feel they can sort of monetize or support from budget over a long period of time. Because, you know, PPP is a great model, extremely important, extremely beneficial for the country if it is done in a correct way. And what I mean by correct way, that the ecosystem is workable, the procurement is transparent, the award of the concession process, the roles of the different line ministry, the roles and responsibilities among the line ministries and the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Economy, the land right related ministry, those roles and responsibilities are clearly understood, and how the interaction takes place with private sector. But at the end of it, so with those ingredients in place, you're able to find a right private sector developer, irrespective of sector, from the global sort of corporate pool, to get interested and bid for a project and participate in a competition, to be awarded in a very sort of arm's length manner. So that is always possible. The key issue really is that when you do a PPP as a country, what happens is that the private sector mobilizes the front-end capital, and the project implementation normally by private sector in most cases is very efficient, very cost conscious, and there is a lot of best practices that are brought into place, excellent risk allocation, technology is top notch. So generally it's very, very well done, on time, on budget. And the lenders also play a huge role in ensuring that that is done. But over time, that investment needs to be repaid. So when you look at sectors, in most countries, certain sectors are easier to commercialize or monetize. For example, power, energy, seaport, airport, transportation, etc. Certain other sectors are such by nature that in many countries, states see them as part of the sort of citizen right and to be provided at a subsidized cost. I mean, it's not necessarily always a full cost recovery model in a commercial sense. So those sectors, if a PPP project is picked up in those sectors, then the question really is that there will need to be a planning process on the government side, that there will need to be deficit financing, viability gap financing over the life of that payback. So I think those are really budgetary level considerations, and those things lead to a common outcome that you will see that in most countries, the bulk of the PPP projects are in power, energy, petrochemical, and transportation. Nowadays, the governments see a lot of value in investing in health and education, with the understanding that it cannot be probably fully monetized in the short run, but it's part of the economic return and that economic model. So they deliberately take an approach to subsidize or give the viability gap financing over a prolonged period, and still take them to market as PPP to bring in the capital and the best practices and the expertise of the private sector and their efficient operation. And those projects are also being quite successful. But the real issue is generally what is the strategy and planning of the government. With the right strategy, right planning, any sector can be viable. But normally what we have seen is mostly the traditional sectors that are easier for the governments to commercialize or monetize, essentially.
Thank you, Ashik, for enhanced answering. Dr. Aydin, Azerbaijan liberated a lot of lands recently from this occupation, and they're doing a lot of infrastructure work. But according to my knowledge, none of the projects is under PPP scheme. Why is it like this? If yes, why this PPP was not implemented in this huge infrastructure action is going on there? What's your advice for Azerbaijan?
Yeah, actually not advice, but I have some suggestions. But I would like to split my speech in two parts. One is today, we have the question is why infrastructure and why PPP? I think we would like to clarify this question. Why infrastructure? I would like to share some very updated numbers. I think GI Hub is a report of GI Hub. Now the global infrastructure investment reached approximately $94 trillion. So there is a gap, very huge gap, which is around $50 trillion. And we should spend $10 trillion annually for infrastructure gap. So it's very clear. And all these numbers before the COVID-19. So now we need more sustainable, resilient, and very strong infrastructure for all of our countries, not just only the member countries or the developing countries, but also the developed ones. So this is the question. So why the infrastructure? And now why PPP? It's very clear. It's very obvious from those numbers and statistics that the national budget or the government parts of the investment will not be enough for investing or for closing those gaps. So we need the private finance. We need the private party skills, their management power, and what they can bring to the government issues or the public services. Because after COVID-19, what we faced, we should focus on not only the infrastructure, but also the resilient and the environment-friendly infrastructure, which is also increasing the gaps more than we have. So as a question, it was 2005, as an answer to your question, when we started to PPP story in Turkey. Actually, from the government, from the private sector, from the advisors, on the ground, nobody knows anything about even the abbreviation. Because I remember I started my PhD, it was 2006, and my professors, not one, but all, didn't even know the abbreviation of PPP. So, and I found an article from Australia, and I told them, okay, I would like to study this PPP. It's a BOT model, but it's an umbrella, it's public-private partnership, so it's enhancing infrastructure. So they told me, okay, go on. So nobody knows about the abbreviation. And the Ministry of Health started, as Mr. Ashik mentioned, especially in Islamic Development Bank, also invested in healthcare in Turkey. We started with the PPP story with the healthcare sector. And at that time, we were telling each other, it's a process, it's a learning by doing. So we learn all those things by doing. But today, I think after 15 years, and not only Turkey, in Kazakhstan, in Bakat project, in Uzbekistan, in MENA region, in Western Europe countries, what we are facing in Africa as well, what we are now facing those information. So it's a sharing by doing process. So for a response to your question, especially for Azerbaijan, I think now we need a little bit time. What is that time? The first one is the shifting paradigm, because I know in Turkey, in Azerbaijan, the reflex of governments and the officials, we have a very, very strong state in our countries. What is that state? State means it's the power of government. So it should be an adaptation working with the private sector. It's a totally different thing. So I think we need time for shifting this paradigm, for developing this kind of PPP project first. Now still I didn't come to Islamic finance for infrastructure, you see. Just I am focusing on working with private sector, with the public sector together. But it's clear, as I mentioned, it's clear that we need the private finance, we need the private skills for the future. When it comes to Islamic finance, Mr. Samir, actually we have very common ground with PPP and Islamic finance. Now, after COVID-19, for infrastructure and PPP, what we are telling people first PPP. So if a PPP project that you develop doesn't touch any positive effects on the people, it means nothing. So we don't need white elephants in our countries. We need really public services that are increasing the quality of our life, quality of public services, and quality of the future of the society. So Islamic finance, they are also looking for some positive effects on the humankind. So this is the first common ground with Islamic finance and the PPP. The second one is, I mean, the backbone of PPP projects is the risk sharing mechanism. What it means, the parties, public and the private, should balance very strictly risk sharing for developing a project, for the successful of projects. So also in Islamic finance, this is the second common ground. The Islamic finance focused on risk sharing, profit sharing, and loss sharing. So we can also use this, the second common ground for developing, for enhancing Islamic finance for the infrastructure projects.
Thank you. I know we are online almost more than 1 hour, 35 minutes now, and I don't want our participants to be tired. So I am gonna give a question which I just received from Mr. Ayhan. He says, how should legal framework to be structured for PPP project in infrastructure sector considering the application of Sukuk? I think I can start with Ashik, then I can go to you, Dr. Aydin. Sounds good?
Sure. No, thank you, Samir. In terms of legal framework, I think in Azerbaijan specifically, there was a BOT law that got enacted in 2016, and that was a very good start. It clarified certain things, like it doesn't necessarily have to go through the traditional procurement process as applicable for public sector. The Ministry of the SMBDA ministry and the Ministry of Economy, they were given quite a bit of role in that, as you know, the ministries who would drive the efforts, as well as obviously there will be Ministry of Finance and other ministries involved. It also laid down the fact, which is very crucial, that the government can provide government guarantee to enable certain PPP projects. So I think that was also important, although there are calculations and upper thresholds in terms of the liability that the government can take under those concessions as government undertaking. So there are a few good things that happened in that, but it also has quite a few loose ends in terms of you know, asset ownership related matters, depreciation charge related matters. And it is also focused on build, own, transfer model. Sorry, build, operate, transfer model. Traditionally, certain projects, you would see that the project company owns the assets. So some of those legal hoops are not cleared yet and not tried and tested yet. But it's a very good start. So in terms of legal framework, what we've seen is that it is good to have a good PPP focused framework and have a programmatic approach and a deliberate approach. And I think it takes back to what Dr. Aydin was saying, that you could end up having a lot of projects which people get excited and get on with without really having that holistic consideration and strategy. When you have a PPP related law, PPP related unit, and that holistic discussion is initiated, that planning, high level upstream planning programming process is better taken care of, focusing at what is needed by the people, right? Because the last thing you want is to have a big white elephant project with a lot of government liability, right? On the contingent side. Because private sector will latch on and they will progress and they will put the investment if the risk allocation and the remunerations are correct. That's their job. So I think that high level, so if you have a PPP related law, if you have a PPP related program, very deliberate, as well as relevant units, either within Ministry of Finance or Economy or any other appropriate ministry, it is generally more deliberate and more programmatic. In a lot of countries, there are a lot of projects that do take place before such laws are enacted under various concessions. And a lot of those projects are also very, very good transformational projects. But some are also, you know, like on the retrospect, one would probably think otherwise. So I think in general, what I would say is issues like ownership, issues like ability of the Ministry of Finance to give guarantees, ability for the government to go through a very specific procurement process, which is much more streamlined, transparent, faster, clarity on how the interaction and roles responsibilities operate between line ministries such as Ministry of Health or Ministry of Transport or Ministry of Energy or Education versus the Ministry of Finance, because those considerations are important. Who does what and who do the private sector goes to. Taxation, because taxation also has various elements that are relevant, to have clarity on those. So there is a whole bunch of issues that are very, very relevant for investors to come in. As far as Islamic finance is concerned, or Sukuk, I think, and these are elements that are applicable for any sort of private sector facing debt financing or equity financing, whether it's Sukuk, conventional Islamic debt finance, or conventional debt finance, or equity investment by developers. It doesn't really matter. These are cross-cutting elements. But specific to Islamic finance, I think what's very important is to note that Islamic finance essentially is an asset-backed finance, right? Now, in an asset-backed finance, a lot of the sophisticated provisions, like what happens in a termination situation, that the project company actually transfers the project assets back to the government. And in Islamic finance, there are products like Ijara, which is essentially, which means that the Islamic lender, it becomes a lease, theoretically a lease provider to the project company. So technically speaking, there are some asset transfer related clarities that are needed to make sure that there is no additional transfer tax, or there is no breach in terms of having an Ijara as an asset class, in contradiction to the concession restrictions that assets cannot be transferred to a third party. So there are some, routine, I would say, simple clarifications that are needed, and normally we get it quite easily from the host governments. But these things are better addressed upfront, so that it need not be repeated every time over and over. So generally, I hope I was able to respond to you, but I would say 95% of the requirements are identical between Islamic finance and conventional. As far as PPP infra projects are concerned, it's mostly to do with clarity, transparency, relevance, and governance, and ultimately sustainability, both for public sector as well as private sector. Maybe 2, 3, 5% is really specific requirement of Islamic finance.
Thank you, Ashik, for enhanced answering this question. And I think with this, we want to thank you, Ashik, and we will continue with Dr. Aydin, and I will give floor to Dr. Wisal, as I know we are under pressure of time. So, Dr. Aydin, last words yours. Then I will give floor to Dr. Wisal for his concluding remarks. Thank you.
Very briefly, in a couple of minutes, I will wrap up. So my second part of speech, actually, I would like to stress on why Islamic finance. There are 4 reasons. The first one is the increasing in Islamic finance institution like ICD, ISDB. So we will see more. The second one is lack of non-Islamic finance. We need new funds. The third one is we need PPP, more PPP. And the last one is blended. We need some blended solution. So I would like to come this question from this blended part. So Mr. Ashik stressed very important word. We should develop PPP projects in a correct way. It's a project planning. I would like to also bring a practical experience from Turkey. When we started, it was 2005. We didn't even think about Islamic finance for infrastructure. So we started with the conventional one, conventional financing, the loans, the EBRD, the World Bank, the international MDBs. And after 5 or 6 years, we came to the 2013. So we understood that we can use also Islamic finance for our infrastructure projects. So we need from the beginning, and it's a very good example for Azerbaijan. We should focus on all kind of infrastructure as a holistic approach. We can use Islamic finance, we can use conventional finance, we can use the blended ones. So this is a very, very important question, because when we came 2013 and we would like to use Islamic finance from ISDB, we understood that the legal framework is not proper for Islamic finance. So we should do some change, some amendments on our PPP legislations. So because, in conventional, you don't need to transfer the ownership of assets. But in Islamic finance, the asset should be temporarily, the assets should be transferred to the private party, and you can issue Sukuk, and you can use Ijara and other models. So we understood after 6 or 7 years, we understood that we should make some amendments on our frameworks. So from the beginning, we need an holistic approach for legal and for the project planning phase, which is very important, because we shouldn't focus on only Islamic finance, only conventional one, but we need some blended ones, which was used in Turkey, in Konya PPP healthcare campuses and ISDB finance. It's around 75 million euros, and it was the first and the biggest Islamic finance used in PPP projects. So, and it's a very successful one, and ISDB pursued financing, investing in PPP projects in Turkey after Konya. And then we have good example, in Djibouti, in Senegal, in Niger, the other Islamic finance tools. So I think we need an holistic approach, and we should focus on the correct way of project planning.
Thank you, Dr. Aydin. Thank you, Brother Ashik, for being in our panel and being such a good speakers. I think, as Mr. Ayman mentioned in his video recording, that it is the first webinar which we did for Azerbaijan. I think we will continue it next year with under leadership of Dr. Wisal and also Mr. Orkhan and Mr. Rufat. I want to thank to my speakers, and of course I want to thank to our online participants who are with us almost more than 1 hour 46 minutes. Dr. Wisal, the floor is yours. Please address your concluding remarks, and we will conclude our webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samir Tagiev and speakers for that insightful discussion. Before concluding the webinar, I would like to add that member countries in Islamic Development Bank could have been demonstrated more support towards the development of Islamic financial mechanism so far. And we discussed here that there is a clearly room for the Islamic finance industry to grow, especially given that the features of Islamic finance products can appeal to a much wider investor group. Currently, total global financial assets of the Islamic finance industry are estimated at around $2.88 trillion. And according to some estimates, are expected to surpass $3.7 trillion by 2024. Sukuk is a tradable instrument and can be liquidated in the secondary market if an investor needs liquidity or wishes to cash in on the potential capital gain. Sukuk are emerging as a viable instrument to complement, sometimes even substitute conventional financing for large infrastructure and energy projects. Islamic finance can be a strong and non-traditional source of financing for SDGs beside conventional finance. The financial stability, financial inclusion, and shared prosperity are together combined with the SDGs. Sukuk creates impact investment, which it generates a measurable and beneficial social or environmental consequences alongside with its financial return on investment. This brings us to end of this webinar. We hope that you have enjoyed it, and during the last 2 hours, almost 2 hours, and sessions have been relevant, insightful, and ultimately valuable for you. On behalf of the Islamic Corporation for the Development of the Private Sector and the Islamic Development Bank Group Business Forum, Center for Analysis of Economic Reforms and Communication of Azerbaijan, and the Small and Medium Business Development Agency of the Republic of Azerbaijan, I would like to convey a big thank to all of our fantastic speakers and to all of you for attending this webinar. As always, please do remember to check our websites to stay up to date with our latest news, research, and events. Thank you for attending. Stay safe and goodbye for now. Sağ olun. Teşekkür ederim.